rather than, listening to the, sort of commercials and other such things that want you to have as much as possible of everything. You can be satisfied a lot easier, and it works better. That's my take on it.
Do you think that's a Western kind of thing, idea about Buddhism?
About
it's
it
like
being
a simple...
Well, no, I mean there are.
Does that mean this temple's full of crap?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's true.
And it seems pretty chaotic to me.
I see what you mean. Yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, but there are the traditional way of a Buddhist monk is you have one tatami mat is your living space. That's the old traditional way, which probably went on in Dogen's time. So all of your possessions and everything you owned and your whole living space was supposed to fit here, on one tatami mat. And you would sleep and eat and do everything right there. So that's pretty, what's the word?
Simple.
Simple, yeah. It's a pretty simple life. But, all this elaborate stuff in temples, I think a lot of it's just, for show and to bring in the big bucks. And, I mean, it's kind of decorated these days.
I like it. I think it's
well, it's really pretty to look at, but a lot of it doesn't really have much to do with Buddhism as such. It's more. Well, I mean, they're having the funeral ceremony, and this is how, this temple gets bigger and bigger. Every time I come here, I think the first time first time I went to one of these retreats, for example, there was only one toilet in the place, and I don't think this room even existed the first time I came here. Or if it did, it was much smaller. So they keep adding on to it. And the way they're able to do that is because of these funeral ceremonies. They're not making any money off of us. And that's the...
How about after the Buddha died? I think there's a lot of, this talk about reincarnation and things like that. What do you think about that?
Reincarnation?
Or what, in the Buddha's case, what do you think he was reborn or anything?
Oh, I don't know. It's funny, there are all these tales, Tibetan Buddhism is full of these, it's funny that you ask it that way, because Tibetan Buddhism is full of these tales of people who are the reincarnation of this or that guy, some lama or something, but as far as I know, there's no stories, at least, that go back as far as Buddha's time of somebody being Buddha's reincarnation. That would be cool. Buddha's reincarnation. Of course, there are people around today who do claim to be Buddha's reincarnation. I think there's some guy who writes a lot of books that get translated in English. He's some Japanese guy who claims to be Buddha's reincarnation. But I think the reincarnation stories, I mean, it's part of it kind of that idea goes back before even Buddha's time in sort of Indian religious philosophy. So Buddha himself kind of made use of that, and Dogen even talks about the guy who's reborn as a fox for 500 lifetimes and so on. That's in Shobo Genzo twice, that story. But Dogen was also very adamant. There's a line, I wish I could remember which chapter, but he says there's this idea that the soul passes on from one body to another, and this idea is absolutely not Buddhism. Once you die, you're dead. So this the idea of reincarnation is a difficult one, because as soon as you start talking about reincarnation, people sort of go, well, if I'm going to live forever, then I'll just put up everything, and they don't want to, and people don't want to do anything, and they sort of want to just sort of be lazy. My own personal take on it, I don't know. I don't think it's important. I mean, if this is a line I like to drag out sometimes a lot, but you know, if there's reincarnation, then this is the afterlife. So you know, we're all worried about the afterlife. Well, you know, if you believe in reincarnation, here you go. Here's your afterlife. What are you gonna do, you know, with it? So that's one way of looking at it. I don't think it matters so much, because the idea of reincarnation gets into, it can only exist if you look at time as kind of a linear thing. So there's the past and there's the present now and there's going to be the future. And that's one way to look at time. But Buddha and Dogen and a lot of the great Buddhist masters were very adamant that real time is only this time. So no past, no future. So there's no reincarnation in the sense that there's no future. There's just this. And you only live here. And so when you die at the moment of your death, and eventually that'll happen, and that'll be whatever it is. But if you try to say that, you know, what happens after you die, you know, it's like saying, I'm gonna go visit my aunt in October. Okay. Even though I can say that, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know, you know, what it'll be like, and it may get cancelled, or it may get bit by a fly, or something like that. But you know, all this stuff where you're trying to kind of put a definition on things that are going to happen in the future after you die and so on are kind of irrelevant to the real problem at hand, I think.
But it strikes me as a major difference between Tibetan Buddhism and Zen Buddhism.
Well, that's for sure.
I think it's pretty clear cut, in my opinion. It's a striking difference.
Oh, that's for sure. Well, you know, you've heard Nishijima do his take on it. You know, if you ask him about it, well, the Tibetan Buddhism is not Buddhism. You know, which is a very harsh way to put it. And actually, I've heard of different lines within Tibetan Buddhism that don't pay a whole lot of attention to reincarnation or any of that stuff, and are actually much more like Zen practice. So I wouldn't go quite as far as saying Tibetan Buddhism is not Buddhism. You know, that's a little bit too big to me. But yeah, it is a clear-cut distinction, and I think a lot of Buddhism in the West these days is sold on this idea of reincarnation, and because, you know, as we come from basically a Judeo-Christian background, and we have this idea of, you know, you die and then there's a judgment and you go to heaven or hell. And if you think about that logically, you know, I remember being even a 5-year-old kid, or maybe not quite 5, maybe 10-year-old kid, and looking at that and going, well, that doesn't make any sense, you know. What about people who are, you know, just a little bit bad? You know, they're not Adolf Hitler bad, but they're you know, and so, like, you know, what's the line? You know, when you go over you know, 17 sins, you know, once you go to the 18th sin, then you're cast into hell forever. And reincarnation seems like a more logical alternative. So,
actually, I was just thinking about something like that when I was coming to the airport, or to the bus station, where, like, the Vatican actually said at one point it's okay to have sex with a condom. So I thought, okay, if you died and had sex with a condom before that, did you go to hell? And then afterwards it's okay now. So.
Yeah. And so it's all very arbitrary. So I think a lot of reincarnation, a lot of Buddhism is sold on the reincarnation theory, because we look at that and it makes more logical sense. You know, if you screw up this time, you got another chance, and so on. And so it's really popular, and the idea of, and people are worried about, you know, death. And so if somebody tells you you're going to live after you die, that's, yeah, people pay big money to be told that, you know. But I don't think the people who are saying that know anything more than the rest of us. You know, that's my take on it. They don't have any idea what happens after you die. They're just, you know, they're just saying that. You know, and it may be